Welcome to the Pacific Bank dashboard powered by Domo Technologies. Here we're logged in as the CEO and we're looking at an overview or snapshot page showing KPIs from a wide variety of data sources on a wide variety of subject areas. It's important to note that with Domo Technologies, each KPI can actually be sourced from one or more data sources. Employee information could be coming from an ERP system. Refer a friend might be coming from an external transaction system. Things like deposits, loans, and commits and cash could be coming from their own operational systems or potentially a data mart or a data warehouse. Whether it's flat file data, relational data, multi-dimensional data in the form of cubes, or things like HTML, XML, XLS, it doesn't matter. Whether it's one data source or 100 data sources, that information can be used to populate the KPIs that we see on the screen. Now, as the CEO, I'll notice, for example, that deposits are actually up 8.4%. And if I click on this information, I can actually get some more detail. Here, I see that my goal is 13.3 billion, indicated by the red line across the KPI, and I can also hover my mouse over any particular data point and be shown that information, more detail for that particular date. Also, I've got several options that I can use to explore, export, and share this information or collaborate with other employees within or even outside my organization. If I hover my mouse over the upper right-hand side of any of these KPIs or badges, as we like to call them, I have several options. One of them is the ability to save my particular KPI in a PDF or JPEG or GIF format. I can download the data into XLS or CSV format if I wanted to export it. I can print it to PDF so that I can generate a hard copy. And I can also show the source data that's sitting behind this if I wanted to see the table data. If I scroll my mouse to the right, you'll see that I've got several options for collaboration, including things around emailing. If I have access to an MMS or IM server, I can generate those types of messages along with either graphical representations of the KPIs or simply links to the dashboard so that a user can come in and see the particular badge that I'm looking at. Along with that, I have the ability to schedule the particular KPI. And what scheduling allows me to do, if I click on this, you'll see that I'm given an add notification box that allows me to specify either when a particular condition is true, such as, say, for example, deposits are up more than X% or deposits are over a particular set value, or on a time basis. So on a schedule, I can say, you know what, every Monday morning at 8, I'd like to get an email with a PDF representation of this along with a link that takes me into the dashboard so that I'm given that particular information. You notice on the left-hand side the buttons New, Edit, and Remove. What this does is allows the users to define, modify, and then delete any scheduled notifications that they like for their KPIs. So as opposed to having to go to IT or some administrator to set up schedules, that can be done automatically. And speaking of schedules, you'll notice in the lower right-hand corner, in fact, of all the badges on the screen, it shows 93 days ago. And that's an indication of how old this particular data is. Now, obviously, in a production environment, in a real-world scenario, we would not expect data specifically for a bank to be 93 days old. That's probably not very useful data. That, in fact, is just an indication of the age of the data that we're using for this particular demo. We would expect, in most cases, that information would be updated either, I don't know, every 5 minutes, every 5 seconds, every 5 hours, maybe even every 5 days. It doesn't matter. What's important to note is that each KPI can be set up on its own particular refresh schedule. So, for example, loan information or deposit information might be updated every 5 minutes or every 30 minutes, whereas something like the number of employees or an overall wealth management snapshot might only be updated once a day or once a week, depending on the freshness of the source data. Regardless of how that happens, Domo can set schedules to refresh the data for each of these KPIs based on the freshness of the source data that it's actually coming from. Another important thing to note, if I click, for example, on the employees, notice how all the other KPIs rearrange themselves. That's based on the screen real estate that we're looking at. In this particular case, on my browser on my laptop, I'm able to fit lots of KPIs from left to right. If I were viewing the same information on a smaller screen, maybe on a lower resolution browser, or potentially on an iPad or an iPhone or an Android or a BlackBerry, these KPIs will rearrange themselves based on the real estate that I'm given. What this means is that without having to redevelop the KPIs for each platform, users who have access can use the device of their choice to come in and consume this information and automatically be given the appropriate representation based on the device that they're using. The CEO of Pacific Bank is now looking at the summary page of the dashboard. And one of the first things that you may notice is that it's got a different look and feel than the snapshot page with the small badges. Here we have more detailed information presented in a variety of KPIs. And one of the things that you may notice right off the bat is that the upper left KPI, daily deposit and loan growth, is actually flashing every few seconds. And if you look even more closely at the vertical bars on the right-hand side of the chart on the left, those are actually changing. And this is to signify that this data is actually being refreshed every few seconds. This is important to note for a couple of reasons. First of all, this is to indicate that this KPI is being refreshed at a different rate than the other KPIs that you see on the screen. Things like loan distribution, problem loans, deposit activity. Those have a different refresh schedule that is longer, in fact, than daily deposit and loan growth. The other important thing to note is that the daily deposit and loan growth is the only KPI that's flashing as the data is updated. This signifies that you are in fact looking at multiple web parts. Each one of these KPIs is in fact its own piece of web data that's being presented in the browser. Why is this significant? Well, if I'm looking at this specifically over a low bandwidth situation or on a mobile device, because one of my KPIs is being updated so frequently, that's the only representation that's being pushed out to the browser as the information is updated. Unlike some solutions on the market where the entire screen has to be repainted or an entirely new flash image has to be generated, only this part of the screen actually has to be updated. And that can make a big difference, especially when you have a large number of users. Another thing that you'll notice is that there are comments. Down here we've got a number 6 with the comments, and if I click on this, I'm actually taken into a detail that shows a discussion thread. And this allows me as a user to collaborate with others who have access to this particular KPI. So if I am responsible for daily deposit and loan growth and there is a problem with it, I can put a comment directly into this that will show up on the KPI saying, hey, I understand there's a problem and I'm taking care of it. And this means that others that are coming in to take a look at this don't suddenly have to stop and pick up the phone or generate emails to find out what's going on. This allows me to do my work and to find out what's going on about the information on these KPIs directly on the screen without having to leave the dashboard application. If you notice on the upper right, we have problem loans, and if I hover my mouse over any one of these particular bubbles, you'll see that this is indicating the amount of delinquency based on days delinquent and also on the risk of defaulting. With a single click, the user can drill down into more detailed information. In this particular case, I'm drilling into an entirely different type of chart, but directly in the same space where the previous KPI was taking up that space. Again, this is important for a couple of reasons. One, it's to show that whether you're drilling down on the same chart type or not, Domo has you covered. So we can drill into different chart types as we get into more detailed information. This is also important in a mobile situation where pop-up windows can become annoying or difficult to navigate or manage for users. Using the exact same screen real estate, users can drill down to get more detail without having to worry about annoying pop-ups or having to scroll to different screens and so on. Another thing that I wanted to point out on the summary page is this deposit performance by branch. And again, if I hover my mouse, it will give me some information about the particular branch. But what's more important to note is that although Domo has its own mapping system built into the application that you can leverage, This particular map is being generated using the Google API. So if an organization is using MapBlast or Google Maps, or they have their own mapping application, we can in fact use those maps as part of the KPI and actually overlay information directly on top of the maps of the user's choice. Let's take a look at some additional examples of pages within the Pacific Bank dashboard powered by Domo Technologies. Here we're looking at the retail page, which in addition to providing us information that's specific to our retail applications, this is important because it highlights a number of different chart types, which Domo out of the box supports more chart types than any other visualization application on the market today. You'll see that we have things around gauges. In this particular case, it's banking as well as auto. In this example in the middle, for service levels by geo, we're looking at a map that's powered directly by Domo Technologies. And down here, you'll see that we've got information around service metrics, again, with the ability to simply stop the mouse over any particular data point and be given more detailed information. But what if I've got information that's coming from sources other than inside my organization? In this case, I'm looking at market news. And this is actually a combination of HTML, XML, and flat file data source integration. Here we're looking at prime rate information being fed from multiple sources. We've got current LIBOR information, again fed from multiple sources. And we're also scraping Yahoo News for industry news that's related specific to banking. And this information is updated automatically every time the user hits this particular page. Domo will go out and scrape the particular sources and extract information, again, through flat files, HTML, and XML, and present that information to the user. So without having to Alt-Tab or go into another window in a browser, we can incorporate data from a variety of sources, even from things other than relational databases, multidimensional databases, or spreadsheets, so that the user has all that information at the fingertips. Another example is if I click on the competition button. This particular case, we're grabbing stock market performance information, in this case from Yahoo Finance, and you'll see that we've got some competitors and some related companies with information from a variety of sources, things around market price for stock price, current analyst ratings, an overall gauge, things around consumer sentiment, as well as headlines, all presented inside of a single KPI. Now to the user, this looks like just a single window, whereas behind the scenes, Domo is actually aggregating all of this information from a variety of sources and presenting it to the user inside of a single KPI so that the user has all the information directly at their fingertips. On the Marketing tab of the Pacific Bank dashboard, here we're presented with a single KPI that is in fact multiple KPIs, all presented to the user simultaneously. Here we see a marketing pipeline showing solicitations all the way through policies sold. We also see a conversion trend over the last 13 months, along with information about bookings and also that same information displayed by region. While this is a great deal of information for the user to see all in a single presentation, what's more important to note is that the user has complete control, even over multiple KPIs simultaneously, to choose things like the time period. In this case now we're looking at monthly as opposed to quarterly, and also with the ability to drill in by line of business, by channel, by segment, and even slice across that information using a simple drop-down box. Whether the user is looking at a single KPI or multiple KPIs, Domo can provide the ability for users to select just the information that's relevant to them around all kinds of dimensionality as well as things around time periods, and then slice across that information so that the information they need is at their fingertips. Here we're looking at the Human Capital Management Intelligence demo dashboard by Domo Technologies. In this case, we're looking at the Employees tab of the dashboard, which shows me information around things like headcount, turnover by department, employee performance, and more. One of the first things that you might notice is that for each of the KPI badges, I'm given a visual indication, both in terms of text, whether I'm up or down on a particular KPI, as well as whether that's good or bad based on the color. In this particular case on turnover by department, I see that with the red exclamation as well as the red text that I've exceeded the threshold or goal that's been set for my particular department. With a single click, I can not only drill into more detailed information around things like department, marketing, GA, and sales, but down below, notice that I've got more detailed information on that same KPI sliced by a variety of dimensions, things like manager, turnover by region, time, tenure, and so on. With a single click, the user is not only given more detailed information, they're presented with additional KPIs without having to run additional detail reports or go into other systems. They can now see this information sliced in a variety of ways. In addition, they can drill into even more detail. You'll notice, for example, turnover by manager. If I hover my mouse over any of the particular data points, I'm given a hover summary of that information, and with a click, I'm taken into a detailed report. In this case, it's a detailed table showing by region, by department, and for each employee, the reason for leaving as well as their termination date and their month of tenure. If I wanted to collaborate with other users, as you may have seen in other Domo dashboards, I can do things around emailing, scheduling, as well as saving, downloading, or printing the particular KPI or the data behind it. Once the user has gotten the information they needed, again with a single click, all the KPIs are returned to their original positions. Additionally, across the top, in this dashboard, users are presented with slices of dimensionality. So if I wanted to drill down or only look at development departments, the same KPIs are now represented with only the data for the particular choices that I set. Now I'm looking only at information by development department and the region North America. I also have the ability to control things around start and end dates, so I can further refine the information that I'm looking at. Notice, for example, in cost per hire, I'm up 4.8%, and this may be something that I want to look at in terms of my cost on a regular basis. In addition to the collaboration features that we've seen before, one of my other options is add to favorite. And with a single click, now if I go to my favorites page, you'll notice that my cost per hire has been added to my favorites page, so that every time that I log into this dashboard, the first page I'm taken to, which is my favorites, will now include the cost per hire KPI, which is something that is in fact important to me. This allows each user to define the KPIs that are most relevant or important to them and place them on a favorites page so that they can be monitored based on what it is the user needs to look at. Welcome to the Demo Police Dashboard powered by Domo Technologies. This dashboard is actually a genericized version of a real dashboard in use by a police department in the southwestern United States. You'll notice that this may look different than other dashboards you've seen that are powered by Domo. The look, the feel, the fonts, the colors, the style, the layout is really limited only by the designer's imagination thanks to the power of Domo Advanced Builder. Another thing to note is we can, as a user, select things around divisions, zones, and council districts and automatically update all the relevant KPIs simultaneously. So, for example, if I click on Council District 2 and click Update, all the things around the last 7 days crimes and arrests are automatically updated. Here, I'll select Council District 3, click Update, and again, the information is automatically updated. Notice that this information is updated very, very quickly. That's because this dashboard employs a Domo feature called snapshot databases. So in addition to being able to cache information in memory when queries are run in real time, if information is updated on a regular schedule, whether that's every 5 seconds or every 24 days or anything in between or even outside of that range, you can leverage a relational database of your choice, be it Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, Teradata, or many others, that will allow us to pre-cache the information that the user will have access to based on the data needed to populate the KPIs, so that when a user comes in and selects things around dimensionality, we don't have to rerun queries back to source databases, which can in fact in some cases be slow and if we have a large number of users, could dramatically and negatively impact that source database. So in addition to the information that we see here on the screen, let's take a look at another tab. In this case, it's Activity. You'll notice that we're looking at some custom maps, and these were actually built and then leveraged using Domo technologies. So I can come in and select a different zone, for example, and my maps for both last 24 hours and last 7 days are updated automatically. And the user can hover over a particular data point to get more detailed information on the spot. Notice on the tab on the right-hand side that report number is actually a highlight, and if I put my mouse there, it changes into a hand. I can, in fact, drill into the source system being taken directly outside of the Domo dashboard for even more detail. So in addition to being able to drill down, as you may have seen in other dashboards, you can drill through or drill across to other systems. Notice also that I can do things like select different charges and also select different zones to be presented with information on the screen automatically. And as I do this, all the information related to that is updated all in near real time, again, thanks to that snapshot database technology. In addition to having maps, I can look at things around both active and historical information so that I can do things around trending and take a look as far back as my source data allows me to go. Just a couple more examples on this particular demo dashboard. If I click on the Traffic tab, notice that I've got several checkboxes across the top. Users can choose just the information that they want to see by simply highlighting or deselecting any of the checkboxes you see on the screen. And finally, on the Admin tab, you'll notice that I have information around things like taser incidents and use of force, all presented in very bright colors against a dark background, because this particular dashboard is used in a dark call center, and so these colors actually stand out. But that is entirely up to the designer to determine what that dashboard is going to look like, as well as the look and feel. If your particular organization uses cascading style sheets or HTML styles, those can be applied to the dashboard automatically, and as those styles change, they can be applied so that all the fonts and colors on the KPIs are updated simultaneously without having to go back and redesign each KPI one by one. In addition to features and functions you may have seen before, where users can do things like download to Excel, generate an email on a particular KPI, save a KPI, or generate a PDF, notice on this dashboard that we have the ability to do those same things for the entire dashboard page, where a user can do things like print and or generate a PDF. So whether it's at the KPI level or the overall dashboard page level, Domo provides the capability for users to export, download, and collaborate on just the information that they want.